Sir, is it started now?
Not yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to post the Zoom link on the YouTube link, so that, we don't have too many people who joined it. So at least those who are waiting there can join us here.
Sure.
Okay, this has joined. I think it started now. Let me just wait.
Sir, is it started now?
Yes. Okay. So as hopefully participants will join, so should we start? Meera, Anand? Hello?
Maybe a minute or two we can wait. I mean,
ठीक है. It was already 7:20. Yeah.
I think the first question to the panel would be, आपके ज़माने में भी लोग students late join होते थे क्या?
Yeah, but I think maybe we should start now. It's 7:22.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me, Kiran, should I start? Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure, sir.
Okay, thank you. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special seminar session of Sitara. Just a quick introduction for some of you who have joined for the first time and perhaps on YouTube. My name is Pankaj Seksaria. I am faculty at the Center for Technology Alternatives for Rural Areas, which is a small interdisciplinary center in IIT Bombay, which, as the name suggests, seeks to work on technologies but meant for rural areas. We run a master's program and a PhD program. So 30 students each in the master's program for both years, and maybe 50 or 60 or slightly larger number of PhD students. We are also a small group of faculty of 10 full-time faculty and 2 or 3 other associated faculty, including our former head, Professor Agnihotri, who continues, of course, to be associated, and there are other adjunct faculty and, of course, a larger community that we are part of. So the seminar series happens every Tuesday evening, and it's open to the public, both inside and outside IIT Bombay. The idea is for us to bring people with different perspectives, different histories, different areas of work, to expose us in the faculty, students, to different ideas, new research, and things like that. And we've had some very interesting talks over the last many years. Now, today is a very, very special session, both for the content and for the form of what this session is going to be. It is, as perhaps some of you have already seen, the event is for the release of a book called Enquiring Minds. So we will talk about the book, and we will do the release, and there's a discussion. But I'll just very, very briefly give you a little time outline for what the event today is. After this introduction, we have brief thoughts by our former head, Professor Agnihotri. Then we do the release of the book. So some of us have the book in our hand and we show it, and that would be the release. Then we have brief notes and mentions by Meera Savara, who curated the English book, and Rakesh Diwan, who helped coordinate, I think, and do the Hindi version of the book. Then we'll have a presentation by Dunu Roy, for 15-20 minutes, remarks by Arvind Gupta, and then we have a question and answer session. So this, if I might very briefly explain the context, is that, and I'm sure the other speakers also will, in 2019, we had a very interesting gathering of people in IIT Bombay that was facilitated by Sitara. It was of the 50th year of the Forum for the Front for Rapid Economic Rapid Economic Advancement of India, FREA, that started life in IIT Bombay 50 years ago. So many of the old members and the association members came together in IIT Bombay, and they had a brainstorming and recollection, and some of us were part of those discussions and meetings. It was a very, very fascinating experience, I must admit. We also had a session in which the FREA members interacted with the Sitara community in one of our lecture halls, and there was a very interesting exchange there as well. And in the last 2 years, members at FREA have coordinated and published this book, which now also there is a Hindi version. And this event today is to share, I think in some extent, what FREA was, what it tried to do, what these stories are, and then of course hear from the members themselves. And I will just narrate, before I hand over to Professor Agnihotri, a little event that strikes me and remains in my mind where this event is concerned. When the event was going on in IIT in 2019, one of our students, a master's student, came up to the hall. He had been attending off and on, and he came panting to me. He was like really excited, very nervous. And he pointed to one of these participants with a bald head and said, sir, is that Arvind Gupta? Is that Arvind Gupta? I said, yes. He said, my God, this is my dream come true. It's like, can I go and take a selfie with him? It was like a fanboy moment for the student. And I realized that it was such a beautiful thing, because what one saw for me was there are different role models or aspirational things out there where we often don't see that as alternatives or as things that people are doing. We have this idea of what the younger generation so-called aspires to do. And it was a really amazing moment to see this young student in his 20s come and look up to somebody like Arvind and feel so excited and inspired, and then want to take a selfie with him. So I just thought it was, and when I read the book, some of those things came back. The anecdotes that all the members relate, they narrate, they discuss. It brings back some interesting possibilities, I thought, about what can be done both inside education and outside education. So for me personally, and certainly for Sitara, I think it's a great opportunity, a great honor to be able to host this session. And I think we'll try in the future to see how some of this could become part of our teaching, maybe as a group or as individual faculty. So thank you very much to FREA. And we have the 4 members from FREA over here on the session on Zoom who will speak. And I now request Professor Agnihotri, our former head, when we facilitated this event, to say a few words, after which Meera and Rakesh will speak to us. SBA? Hello? Did he get logged off?
He's on mute.
Yeah, no, I'm back again. There was some problem with the net.
Yeah, you can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. We can see you as well.
Okay.
So you can please, yeah, it's your turn.
So it was as per Murphy that when you were finishing and you were going to ask me to say something, that my net became unstable. I'm on my hotspot. So sorry about that. But this is a mixed feeling, and a feeling of a lot of elation, because I was in IIT in the late 70s, and Dunu and his friends, they were kind of, we used to talk about them, they were more iconic persons in nature. And many of us would have liked to do what they had done. I mean, essentially going off the beaten track. So later when I came to Sitara and this opportunity presented itself, the FREA get together, I realized that this has a special relevance for Sitara because each year, each batch of Sitara, when they pass out, dream something like what FREA had done then of trying to do something which makes a difference to society. And I thought it would be a wonderful experience for them to look at a set of people who did something similar then and what are their thoughts now. So that is where we organized that workshop, and I'm sure students liked it hugely. We video recorded the entire event, and later on I had taken 2-3 days off just to go through that video, and it was again a fascinating experience to listen to what people thought, where they are, and most of them, I would say, still carry that zeal within them. And then this proposal came about this book. And I think this book will be an inspiration and a guide to many of the younger people who dream. I mean, we in our cynicism might think that the younger generation doesn't do this or that and so on and so forth, but they do retain their idealism. I think some of them probably as good or as bad as we were in our time. So I think it is just as well this book is getting released, and as part of Sitara then, I was quite proud to be associated with those deliberations, and I also today am quite proud that I have some small role in this entire event. So without much ado, I'll hand over back to Pankaj, and I wish probably some Sitara batches will also come together after maybe 40 or 50 years and then reflect back on what they had dreamt and where they have reached. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Rakesh, Meera, Dunu, if you have a copy of the book, can the next thing be to do a release, and maybe we can just show it on the screens? And of course, you and Rakesh will speak about it. All the others, Arvind, maybe you have a copy.
Yes, sir.
So if you can see the screens, then this is the book, Enquiring Minds in English. And Rakesh, हिंदी में बताइए क्या नाम है? आपके हिंदी कॉपी भी आई नहीं है, क्या आ गई है?
Meera has a Hindi copy.
All right, so that's it. Lovely. Thank you very much. We'll try and get a few copies in Sitara, and then can make it available for students to have a look, and faculty as well. Thank you so much. Meera, can I request you? You're muted, Meera.
Yeah.
Can I request you and Rakesh to say a few words each about what your experience has been about doing the book, both in English and then in Hindi, and then we'll hand it over to Dunu. Meera, please.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you, Satish. They certainly had a dream. They were young, almost 20 years old, and they were from the most prestigious college at that time in India. You're right, IIT Bombay. They wanted to do something for the development of our society. They were the first generation after the independence kids. And India was undeveloped and poor. And so began FREA with the pompous name of Front for Rapid Economic Advancement of India. They started with the idea of a technical project of wanting to help small-scale industries and realized very soon that they had little role to play in that. Then a chance encounter in a third-class compartment with Vikas Bai from the Society for Developing Gramdans led to what became the signature program of FREA, the Involvement Program. In this program, we selected students from various kinds of disciplines to work in about 30-40 projects all over India. The Society for Developing Gramdans grew out of the Gramdan movement started by the late Gandhian Vinoba Bhave, where landowners voluntarily gave up surplus land for the landless. And these lands were undeveloped, and it was the role of the volunteers to help and use the technical skills, making surveys, doing irrigation surveys, or the list could go on, and they have been mentioned in the book. So from a small group of students, it eventually grew to become a program covering over 350 students in over 50 parts, 50 projects all over India. Students also came from all over, and it was a fantastic experience of national integration. The focus of the program was not to give solutions, and this was the most important part. The focus of the program was to develop a questioning attitude of everything, of the relevance of their education, of science, of technology, of development. In a sense, the motto could have been question everything. And sure enough, this is what did happen. But as all experiments go, it faded away after a few years. And everyone went their own ways, doing various projects. And then came the days of the internet, and I started doing a search and realized that there's not a mention of FREA, the excitement, the program that we ran anywhere. And thus began this project where we started compiling whatever we could. And with the help of Sitara and IIT Bombay, we had the reunion. In this book, we have tried to share what this experience was, how we attempted to develop a questioning attitude, and more exciting, what occurred in this reunion was the fact that this little experience had transformed so many lives. It had made people question their own perspectives of what they want to do and what they did do later. And it's my real pleasure to have been able to collate this book, and I thank all of them who have made this possible. So thank you, FREA. Thank you for allowing me to write this wonderful experience. Rakesh made a comment at this thing about the lack of availability of such development literature in Hindi. And that is when I was determined that this book will be brought out also in Hindi, and Rakesh has been instrumental in getting this done. So over to you, Rakesh.
You're muted, Rakesh. Rakesh, you're muted.
Okay. Is it okay? अभी
Yes,
ठीक है?
Yeah, हाँ, अब ठीक है, अब ठीक।
ठीक है। धन्यवाद मीरा। और मैं समझता हूँ कि मैं जो कह रहा था वो ज्यादातर बातें मीरा ने अपनी बात में कही हैं, लेकिन एक दो बातें मैं जरूर इसमें जोड़ना चाहता हूँ। एक तो ये समय आप देखिए कि 60s का समय है, आजादी के 12, 13, 15 साल बाद का, और 15 साल बाद के समय में संसार को एक बहुत ही प्राइम, एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण इंस्टीट्यूट से निकले हुए छात्र छात्राएं कैसे देखते थे, कैसे उस दुनिया को देखते थे, और इस किताब में वो रिकॉर्ड किया गया। वो अलग अलग लोगों के अनुभव हैं जो अलग अलग तरह से दुनिया देख रहे थे, अलग अलग प्रकार से दुनिया में अपनी भूमिका तय कर रहे थे, और जैसा उस किताब का नाम भी है कि अपनी जमीन की तलाश कर रहे थे। और ये एक बहुत महत्व की बात मुझे लगता है। और इस लिहाज से पहली बात तो मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि ये एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बात है कि उस समय का हम इतिहास एक बार फिर से देखें, एक बार फिर से समझने की कोशिश करें। दूसरी बात जो मीरा कह रही थी कि हिंदी में इस प्रकार का साहित्य नहीं है, बहुत मुश्किल भी है, तो हम लोगों ने सोचा कि इसको हिंदी में निकालें। अनुवाद हमारे एक मित्र हैं चैतन्य नागर, उन्होंने किया और मैं उसका संपादन कर रहा हूँ, और जल्दी ही हम लोग उसको हिंदी में निकाल के आपके सामने प्रकाशित कर पाएंगे। ये दूसरी बात थी। और तीसरी बात मुझे लगता है कि एक प्रकार की दस्तावेजीकरण की भी है। ये किताब एक प्रकार का डॉक्यूमेंट होगा जो पिछले 50 साल में किस तरह से दुनिया बदली है, किस तरह से चीजें बदली हैं, किस तरह से लोगों के मूल्य बदले हैं, किस तरह से संसार बदला है, इसके बारे में बताने के लिए। तो मैं बस इन 3-4 बातों के अलावा कुछ और खास मेरे पास नहीं है। मीरा ने उस बात को बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से कह दिया है, तो मैं आप सबका आभारी हूँ, आपने मुझे समय दिया। बहुत धन्यवाद पंकज।
Thank you, Rakesh. I just make one small comment is that, for some of us who don't know these people and the work, I think like Meera said that there was no record of some of the work done, and reading the book, which is full of very interesting anecdotes, gives a very interesting and sometimes very inspiring idea of what this generation, which was perhaps striking out and finding something for their own, what all they did, where all did they go, what were their hopes and aspirations, and some of the interventions that were made, which I, as a growing up person in my 20s and 30s, knew a little bit about. And it was very nice to then meet some of these people in this meeting. But we are talking in abstraction. So the request and the urge to all of us here in Sitara would be to go through some of these pages of this book and see the small things that they said, and this big and small things that all these members said and did in some of the remotest parts of the country then. So if Sitara today talks about working in rural areas, we can imagine what rural India must have been 50, 60 years ago, and what it meant for somebody as a bunch of IIT students or otherwise to step out from here and go there and experience and try to intervene, and like they keep saying, some successes, some failures. So we'll certainly get a few copies. That's what we will certainly do. So yeah, I won't take more time. And Dunu, over to you. And maybe 15, 20 minutes, we hear your views and maybe more if you'd like to. So please go ahead, Dunu.
I try to not take too much time. Thank you. Thank you so much to Sitara and all other colleagues there. It was very, I think, courageous of you to allow us this space and to be able to share some of these views. Where shall I begin? It's an interesting commentary that, 50 years later, young people should be interested in what some other people did 50 years earlier, and why certain things suddenly become viral, why this technology allows us to reach so many more people. I recall there was a drought in Marathwada. That was one of the things FREA took up. And Meera had managed to get Mahindras to donate us some Jeep parts, and we'd got a Jeep from UP, I think, and the thing got repaired, and then we drove the Jeep down from Bombay to Marathwada. And I was driving, Ullas was sitting next to me, and Meera and Javed were sitting at the back. And the two of us in front could keep hearing these giggles and murmurs and, some conversation going on at the back, in the back seat. And obviously, both of us were very curious. And this is the gift of FREA. You become very curious about various things. So we turned around eventually, couldn't hold ourselves much longer, and said, what sweet murmurings are going on at the back? And they both burst out laughing and said, we are discussing accounts. Now, this is the kind of environment within which FREA grew up. There was a lot of joy. It wasn't, kind of doing good for the poor kind of mentality. There was a sense of enjoyment, a sense of enthusiasm running through this whole thread. And those of you who will be going through this book may be able to capture it, I don't know. But the main thing is, I think we all stand on the shoulders of people who worked before us and then see further. And that was very true of all of us. It's not that we learned just like that. We learned from the experiences of seniors who preceded us. I remember one meeting that we had in the village of Jamadi. This is in Madhya Pradesh. And there were a lot of very fiery Marxists, a lot of very subdued socialists. There were some very assertive technical people. And we had the ex-chief minister of Odisha who came for this meeting. And he must have been about 70 at that time. And of course, there was a lot of talk of armed revolution. And he said gently, you people talk about armed revolution so glibly. What you don't seem to realize is that it was a disarmed population. The British had disarmed everybody in India. So how do you expect a disarmed population to carry out an armed revolution? So what Gandhi did was determined by the constraints of the time. So you need talk in such a glib manner about what is possible, not possible. You have to look at the environment in which you work, in which you live. And it is comments like this, these are the eureka moments, if you like, that suddenly you begin thinking in a new direction. You begin thinking that maybe what I was thinking earlier, maybe it's not the right thing. Maybe I need to think more. Maybe I need to reflect more, gain some more experience, find out more, and then only move forward. That, in a sense, is what FREA was all about. That it tried to develop this at the core of its program and develop it in a larger across space and time. The three questions that I thought I would kind of pose here before this audience is, looking back after so many years, did it in any way challenge education in the various universities and colleges from where all these students came? And it seems it did. Definitely in IIT, something happened within IIT. So many people got involved that in IIT Bombay that they managed to work through the faculty, through the administration, and get something like Sitara started. And perhaps that story can also be told. But it happened elsewhere also. When the doctors from Grant Medical College went to, they had gone to Bengal just when the Bangladesh war had not yet begun, it was about to begin. And refugees were streaming into Bengal and Assam and other places. And 10 lakh of them, and the camps were set up. So we got this request, can you send some doctors? So we went to the chancellor of the university, who happened to be the governor of Maharashtra, and persuaded him to be able to send students from Grant Medical College to Bangladesh to Bengal for working in those camps. And when those doctors came back, they agitated for the medical colleges to make this a part of the curriculum. So changes took place across spaces. I remember also in Cuttack, from where anthropology students came, their exposure to whatever they did during this summer program, they went back to Cuttack and said, this must be part and parcel of what we are studying. And all this would not have been possible if the professors, the teachers had not put in their encouraging and facilitating efforts. And I must say this, that teachers in those days were extremely encouraging for anybody who wanted to break out, wanted to do something different. I'm not too sure now, but at least in those days. So standing on the shoulders of other people is extremely important to understand what the future could hold, looking back at the past. And it is this element that I think was very beautifully captured. There's Priyanka from Sitara, who was kind of doing the recording of the sessions while we were discussing in Bombay, all of us had got together for this 50th reunion, so to speak. And her response is very interesting. She said, and it's there in this book, she said, we have a lot of platforms like social media, but my basic doubt is, are the youth of today asking or being trained to ask the right questions? I doubt they are. We are asking where to get alcohol, where to get the newest fashions. We are asking where is entertainment. But are we asking where is development? And I think that if over 2 days of listening to us, a student from Sitara could grasp this basic element of are we asking the right question, then perhaps we've done our job of passing on whatever experience we had. And hopefully it will penetrate into the educational system in different ways. The second question I thought I would pose is, did it improve learning, this experience of the involvement program, which you will read about in the book? Now, what was this involvement program? It basically consisted of, people like me going out from FREA to different colleges and different places and saying, what is the problem that you are identifying? What do you think the students can do? And then we'd go to the colleges and say, look, there is this place, there's this village, there's a slum, there's this set community. Would you like to help them solve their problems? And whenever we had a meeting, and these were all meetings in the evenings, at least I think 50 to 100 students would gather. And our task was to get them to ask the right questions. The whole purpose of the exercise was that you're going for 4 weeks, you're going to do a job. This job is going to be related to your discipline. And did it improve their own understanding, their learning? So I'll just take from the book, there's a long list of what the students did in that particular year and went out to various places. The first place they went to was Mahakalpada in Odisha. 2 anthropology students and 1 general volunteer spent 4 weeks to evaluate a saving scheme being run in a cyclone-affected area as part of a development cum rehabilitation project. I remember this very well because this one, I'd met a bank officer on a bus, and he had said that they'd been given a target of generating so many crores from the districts in savings, and they had not been able to generate it. So could we help them understand why not? So these students had gone for that purpose. And the whole idea was why, the question was that as posed by the bank, why has the bank not been able to generate this 2 crores as savings deposited in the bank? And they spent 4 weeks surveying, and they came back and they said, you're asking the wrong question. It's not why has the bank not been able to get this. They said, you have to ask, do people have the savings? That's the right question. And if the people don't have the savings, obviously the bank is not going to get it. So in terms of their learning, they not only started asking the right question, but then they started asking, why is it that people don't have savings in a cyclone-affected area? What happens to their incomes? What happens to the money that they earn? And when asking that question, they start asking questions about development. Why are people poor? What happens in terms of the hard work that they saw people doing, and say, why is this hard work not being remunerated properly? What is the reason for it? And so structures of exploitation, of caste, of class, of gender, all these start unfolding the moment you start asking the right question. Similarly, let me take the last one. This was in Thodikana and Mysore, and two volunteers from Manipal had gone to plan an agricultural development scheme, including lift irrigation for 100 peasants who had recently acquired 200 acres of government land. So these two volunteers, they had gone to plan this agricultural development scheme. And it's interesting that it should be lift irrigation. Why? Because the idea prevailing at that time was you lift water from a stream and then, so obviously there's a gradient, and lift it to where the farms are. And when they got there, they actually changed the question. They said, why should we lift the water? Why can we not get water from further upstream and make it a gravity flow irrigation? What would the water irrigate? What are the crops? And suddenly they started also wondering, where did these 100 people get these 200 acres of land from? And so the whole story of how these 100 farmers, landless people, had struggled for 3 years just to get that land freed from the clutches of a landlord and get it allotted in their names, that started unfolding. So for these students, it wasn't just lift irrigation. They were examining a whole set of correlates, linkages, things that would not have been taught to them in their universities or in their colleges. The last question that I would explore in this is, of course, there's a section on it. Why did it collapse? You know, Meera has said because people went their different ways and so on. But then the point is, are these things implicitly unsustainable? Do they not work beyond a particular time and space? I'll just add three factors to that, just to think over. One is it doesn't cost too much, this kind of a program. Taking students out for 4 weeks, 6 weeks into rural, urban areas to learn about themselves, their education, and about other people. It doesn't cost much. It's actually a very cheap effort. We did it on a shoestring budget, primarily because most students paid for their fares, and most places they went to fed and housed them. So actually, there's not much expenditure. Secondly, the critical input is to ask the right question. So you need a core of people scattered across the country. And we had, 14 centers at one time where there were these people who could go out to nearby areas and ask those questions, the critical questions, so that people learned more. And the third is that, the methodology that evolved, I've been using it for the last 50 years. So clearly the methodology works, and it works not only with students from elite institutions like the IITs, and I'm happy to also learn that the IITs are no longer as elite as they were. There's a lot more opening up of even the IITs. But this methodology works across the board. It works with young people in villages. It works with students who are in slums in cities. It works wherever. This way of asking the right question, so to be able to get the right answer. And it needs to be sustained, particularly in these very, very discordant times that we are living in. Why is there no institutional framework for this to survive? And that is a question that we really need to ask. At one time, the National Service Scheme, which actually learned from experiences like this in the 60s and the mid 70s, it came into being in all colleges to actually capture this essence. It did. It became a part of a curriculum, thoughtlessly carried out. So what is the form of institutionalization that will sustain such an effort? And the reason I ask this is, I've just told you 2 stories out of, the hundreds of stories that are hidden there in FREA. Supposing each one of those was documented, you'd have 1,000 stories of how young people changed. And if this program had carried on for 20 years, instead of just those glorious 8-10 years, if it had carried on 40 years, we'd have today a cadre of thinking, critical, analytical, sensitive, and thoughtful people who thought across borders, who thought across boundaries imposed by our formal education system. And they would surely be able to change what we see today in India of the kind of hate, the kind of polarization, and the kind of extremely discordant politics that we see around us. I will stop there, and hopefully, some of you will have something more thoughtful to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dunu. I was actually, maybe if later I would have loved to request you to tell us the story of Bhola Prasad and the dumpy level in Palamu. It's such an amazing story, and last time when you narrated it, it was such a joy to listen to. So maybe if you have time later, at the end, you can also narrate that story to us, because it captures so nicely some of the things that you have been saying. But thank you so much. Arvind?
Well, I think Dunu has made my task much easier. And as he said, that we stood on the shoulders of very, very tall people. During the national movement at Gandhiji's call, there were thousands of very, very highly trained professionals who left their jobs and got into nation development. And, it's during the late 60s, early 70s, there were a lot of political ferment across the world. In India, we had the Naxal movement, the Jayaprakash Narayan movement. In 1968, the students in France were out on the streets questioning authority. In 62, Rachel Carson had written a very famous book, Silent Springs, which ushered in the environment movement. There was a feminist movement coming out. And whenever there is a churning of society, इस तरह का जब मंथन होता है, it releases a lot of social energy. So those were very politically very heady times. And the defining political slogan of that time was go to the people, live with them, love them, start from what they know, build on what they have. And there were many pioneers, like Dr. Anil Sadgopal in the early 70s. He leaves his job in the DIFR and goes to a small village in Madhya Pradesh to start the very famous Hoshangabad science teaching program. There were many others, who, when young idealist people, full of passion, they see the contradictions in society, they want to mend things. They want to work towards a better society. They don't want to make hate. They don't want to make war. Many people in the 70s said, we are not going to work with the war industry. We are not going to make missiles in these warheads. Our lives mean much more to us. If we can't help people, we will not kill people. So these are kind of moral issues. I think I don't have much to say, but this process of continuing education, this involvement program, started long, long back. In the early, late 60s, early 70s, we had Baba Amte, Anandwan, which was a kind of a very central place where thousands of children from Maharashtra, young youth in the thousands, would spend 1.5 months in Anandwan. They would be digging pits in the morning, and the whole day they would be having cultural programs. We had some of the most progressive people, Pula Deshpande, Kumar Gandhar, Neelu Phule, Vishnu Chinchalkar, they all would congregate there. And many of the later activists in Maharashtra, whether they were of the right or of the left or liberal views, came from these kinds of involvement programs. Recently, in the last 10 years, we have a search started by Dr. Abhay Bang in Gadchiroli, which has a similar program called as Nirman, where once again hundreds of students from Maharashtra, young idealists, full of passion, they go to Gadchiroli 4 or 5 times in a year, spend 3 or 4 days, and they work on societal problems. So this, I think, this program, as Dunu said, is it should be continued, and it has great potential of sensitizing the youth, by experiencing poverty themselves. If someone digs a pit or breaks stones for just half a day, nothing would happen to a middle class, but just 4 hours of digging a pit or breaking stones would expose them to what manual labor is, what poverty is. And those questions, it's not just telling them theories about poverty, but experiencing poverty in its most naked, in its most raw form. And then the questions start emerging. I'll end with this. I would like to thank Sitara, Professor Agnihotri, for having hosted the conference 2 years back. I was not part of FREA directly, but I met many stalwarts of FREA, people like Shailesh Gandhi, people like Javed Anand, Professor A.G. Rao, Ravi Chopra, Nalini Naik, just to name a few. All of them have done very pioneering work. And lastly, I would like to thank Meera, because she has I went through the entire book, and she has put in her heart and soul. And I think it's great documentation, and it would help youth, they would understand what were the thought process of people 50 years back. And I think it would help a lot of several generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Arvind. We can now maybe go to the question answer session. If any of the speakers, Meera, Rakesh, Dunu, or Arvind, you want to say something? And in the meanwhile, we'll ask students, particularly first students, if you have any questions, and then once that is done, we can open it up to some of our faculty members who have joined. So if there's anyone in the student community here, if you have any questions, and if some of the people joining on Facebook, maybe you can, on YouTube Live, you can put your questions there, and we'll try and pick them up and place them for the 4 from FREA who are speaking with us today. So yeah, anyone in the students here who would like to ask a question? No? I'm sure there will be. Nobody at all?
Yeah, I think they're just worried that they won't ask the right one. Don't worry, here, Dunu will take any question and make it the right one.
Okay, while we are waiting then, and I'd urge, if, to, like Meera said, ask any question that come to mind. But meanwhile, if then any of the faculty members, I think there are a couple of faculty members outside of Sitara also, but within our Sitara community, faculty or otherwise, please do any comments or any questions for our panelists today. So you have stunned everybody into silence. Okay, there is Subodh. Yeah, Subodh is one of our colleagues in Sitara. Subodh, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Pankaj, and thank you, everybody. It was a kind of a very nostalgic. I was in IIT doing my BTech between 77 to 82. And I remember still very vividly Ullas Gore, standing, at the bottom of the stairs, and talking with me for hours. And Ullas used to stay with another cohort from my, a student from my cohort, Raju Damle. And all of us, we used to have long night discussion. And I should say, I have been saying a lot about this, and I should say once again that it was a very, because Dhunu was sort of somebody we had heard of. Dhunu was not in IIT Bombay at that time. And but it prompted many of us, and including me, to basically try and go take a different path. And then I moved to IIT Delhi to do my PhD in Center for Rural Development and Appropriate Technology. And there was Dr. Rajendra Prasad, who took me to Dhunu and Imrana, because Imrana's, I think, office, I remember, was just across the wall between IIT and JNU. And Rajendra Prasad and I used to sort of sometimes jump over the wall and go to JNU campus from the backside. So yeah, and we in IIT Bombay, when we started in '82, we had a group called Group for Rural Activities, and which we founded with direct support from Anil Date, KR Date, Ullas, Vilas, who were working with KR Date. And, so those were the really days, very nostalgic and very inspiring days. And 30, 40 years after those days, I still vividly remember that. And those days gave me strength never to repent on all the experimentation I did with my life. Okay, so I really value those days and value what these stalwarts did before us. And I want to come now to the question Dhunu raised, are these models sustainable? And how we can basically try to see sustainability in a changing socio-economic political situations in India, especially after last 7, 8 years. We are seeing that tremendous difference happening, tremendous changes happening in our country. And we need to work on it. Not alone, but with active collaboration and active involvement of younger people. There are many younger people who are trying to do this, trying to take some different paths. And I feel that they are facing tremendously challenging situation, not only political situation, not only economic situation, even at the level of their own families and parents and the other members of families. They are facing tremendously challenging situation as compared to what we faced when we were just out of IIT. And so I would say to Dhunu, SBA, and other people that the next step would be, yes, we celebrated, but next step would be what next? And obviously, we will not play the leading role. There are many young people who can help us to envisage what next, because it's very disturbing, at least for me and many of you, what is going to happen in this country. So these are my some suggestions that we need to take this process ahead. And with Pankaj sitting there and taking interest, I see there are lots of possibilities that this will be taken ahead. So I would be happy to join those efforts. Thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for everything you did in last 50 years. And thank you for the book. And thank you for this event also. Thank you very much. Bye.
Would any of the FREA members want to say something? Otherwise, in addition to that, I also wanted to, this question that Subodh has asked, what next? If our students don't have questions, then this question can be for them. Like Subodh said, and what next? So what does our Sitara community students on this panel today think about what next in terms of what should be done or what they think can be done or what they see as the way forward? So again, if any of you, if you don't have questions, maybe you can think along with us. And of course, to Dunu, Meera, Rakesh, and Arvind, if you want to respond to any of to what has been said by each one of you, or also Subodh or anything else, please go ahead. Any brave student volunteers to think what might be next? Lakshmi, why don't you you say what you want to say? I mean, don't worry about putting it in the chat. We'd love to hear you, to see you also perhaps. Lakshmi?
Sir, is hearing enough?
Sorry?
Is it enough if you can hear me?
Yes, of course, of course. We'd love to see you, but if we can't, then that's fine. Please go ahead and say what you have to say.
Sir, I feel like learning about what all I visited in 627 was actually pretty great for me. And now I'm actually interested in going for 609 more. I was a little more afraid, I can handle it. But I don't know what I need to learn. I mean, I don't know what I need to look for, especially in 609. And when Roy sir spoke about how a lot of students have done that from a long time back, I want to know if there is something special he'd like to mention that I need to look into when I get to go to 609.
Dunu, did you get that question? Maybe it was also directed at you.
It was a little unclear. If somebody heard it properly, if you could.
What should she look forward to learning or doing when she goes out? Like your involvement program, Sitara has a 9-week village stay.
Yeah.
So what should she learn? I mean, if I got Lakshmi right, or how will she know that she's learning? You know, something of that kind is what I understood of her question.
That's a difficult question. I don't have any answers. I mean, you learn about yourself. You learn whether you are capable of doing something. You learn about what you have learned, whether what you have learned is of any use. And you also learn about situations which you've never seen before. So learning is, I suppose, embedded in everything. The starting point of a learning process is to ask the question. And if Lakshmi is asking this question, what should I learn? I think she's already started. She's exploring. I don't think there's anybody who's going to tell you.
You want to ask
Thank
something
you, sir.
further, Lakshmi? I mean, does that give you some sense to your answer? You want to elaborate or respond?
No, sir. That I'll sit and think about it.
You sit and think about it. Does Rakesh or Arvind want to say something as well? Or Meera? You will have to unmute. Yeah, Meera.
I think we used to try and do this in our orientation program. Before students were sent out to any program, we used to have a group actual get-together. We didn't have internet in those times, but we would meet them in groups and they would exchange, share with them what they're going to do and, elicit questions from them. Why are you going to do lift irrigation? What is it for? What's, various ways. What is the sexual division of labor? What is happening to women? And so, how does caste play a role in everything? What is going on? So the question, I think, is you have to just be extremely curious and, ask everything which hits you about at that time. If you cannot do that, then you need to start questioning yourself. Why am I not curious? Why am I not interested in finding out about myself, about the people there?
Right, great. Thank you, Meera. I think we have Bakul. Bakul's hands up. Bakul, would you like to go ahead and maybe also briefly introduce yourself, Bakul? So,
Yes.
yeah.
I
Great.
don't have a question, but I want to tell about my experience. So I'm a faculty here with Sitara since 2009, and this is how my journey to Sitara happened, which I want to tell over here. In 2003, I joined the Karnataka government, and when I was with this Environmental Management and Policy Research Institute, I was asked whether I could work on environmental safeguards for a World Bank project. And I, with a training from IIT Bombay in industrial, environmental science and engineering, was very intrigued. And I said, okay, why not try this out? And I started trying to learn what is watershed. And that's where my journey started. But I want to tell that when we were developing this environmental safeguards along with social, that was my first exposure. And we had the World Bank mission come in, and we had Donu come there. Donu, you don't remember me, but I've never forgotten how you got angry at the work I did for my first project. And I kept wondering, what did I do wrong? And my journey to through environment and development started there with you being angry. And I stayed in this field. I'm here with Sitara now. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I got angry with you. Okay.
Because I was trying to apply all industrial stuff, to watershed projects. I didn't know the scale. And I just didn't understand why you were angry at me. And then Sonia Sandhu, she explained why.
Sonia.
And then she asked me, don't you know Donu? I said, no. She said, he's from IIT Bombay. I said, I don't know. And but yeah, it changed my career. I changed my career because of that. I'm still in the field of environment.
I'm so sorry.
दोनों यार ज्यादा लोगों पे गुस्सा होते तो और भी
Yeah.
There is one comment in response to Lakshmi's question on the YouTube. I'll just read it out. It's Imrana, who's also, I think, been part of FREA. She says, sometimes learning to listen to others is the first thing in that process of figuring out what we want to figure out. Yeah, so thanks Imrana. Yeah, anybody else would like to ask or say or respond or comment? And maybe Rakesh and Arvind, would you like to step back in and just share and say something more? Either of you? Rakesh,
Yes, sir. I heard, I was a second-year student in IIT Kanpur, and Dr. Anil Sadgopal was invited for a lecture, and I was a backbencher listener. I thought I'd slip out if his lecture was boring. But, instead, he was a very different kind of a speaker. He said that we have been there in that village trying to teach children science for the last 4 or 5 years, and we have not made much headway. He said, if you're in a city, you have this very romantic notion of a village. गांव का पनघट है, सब तरफ हरियाली है, महिलाएं सिर पे मटकी उठा करके जा रहे हैं. But once you go to a village, you encounter class, caste, and gender in its most ferocious form. And people are not interested in the poor children going to school, because where would they get cheap labor from? So these are that is the kind of it was like a worm in my head, which just kept mulling for a couple of years. And then in 1977, I finished 2 years of training in Tata Motors as a graduate engineer trainee. I had some leave, and then I went to Kishore Bharti, which was run by him, and for 15 days. And I liked the program very much because I thought that they were working with government schools, there were no private schools. And the situation of the schools was pathetic. Children learn science just by mugging up definitions and spitting them out. No school had a lab. And so that set me thinking. And then finally, I was able to get 1 year's unpaid. I was not in a position to leave my job in telecom, but Tata Motors, because Kishore Bharti was then 50 years back funded by the Tata Trust. So the Tata Trust and we intervened, and I got a year's study leave to go to Kishore Bharti. And the experiences I had over there made me think that, well, I could, this is something up my sleeve. I can't do many things, but some tinkering I can do. This is my background. I can do some toys. And this is what got me started. So I think this involvement program, sending students to see different realities of a country, how the poor survive, how there is not a drop of drinking water many places, how there is so much of power cut, how there is casteism, how there is communal hatred. If people experience this in a very raw form, questions would emerge from within. And then, of course, someone can mentor them. But this is the effect it had on me.
राकेश, आप कुछ माइक को आप अनम्यूट कीजिएगा।
हाँ, मुझे कुछ खास बात नहीं, मुझे सिर्फ ये कहना है कि ये अंतर बहुत स्पष्ट है। अभी ये नहीं हो रहा है, ये क्यों नहीं हो रहा है, ये मुझे लगता है सभी के सामने प्रश्न है कि अब ये सब खत्म हो गया। मैं नर्मदा बचाओ आंदोलन में सालों से काम कर रहा हूँ और मैं देख रहा हूँ कि नए लोगों का आना वहां बिल्कुल कम हो गया। कम क्या, बंद ही हो गया। नए लोग बिल्कुल नहीं आ रहे। हमारे जो कार्यकर्ता थे वो अलग अलग कारणों से वहां से चले गए, लेकिन अभी हमारे पास कोई भी खासतौर पर बड़े इंस्टीट्यूशन से पढ़ा हुआ या समझ वाला व्यक्ति हमारे पास नहीं आता। नर्मदा आंदोलन छोड़ दीजिए, मध्य प्रदेश की जो बहुत सारे और संगठन और संस्थाएं हैं वहां पर इस प्रकार का काम करने वाले लोग नहीं है। शायद इसमें हम लोगों की गलती है, हम इस बात को पहुंचा नहीं पाए या संवाद नहीं कर पाए, या कुछ परिस्थितियां बदली हैं। इसलिए मेरा तो एक प्रकार का सवाल ही है ये कि ये अभी क्यों नहीं हो रहा, आज क्यों नहीं हो पा रहा। 50 साल पहले जैसा अरविंद कह रहा है या दोनों कह रहा है कि भीड़ लगती थी लोगों की। मुझे याद है नर्मदा आंदोलन में हम लोग वापस करते थे 80s में, जब लेट 80s में हम लोग शुरू कर रहे थे तो बहुत लोगों को हम वापस करते थे कि नहीं जाना है। विदूषक कारखाने में हम लोग जब थे तो बहुत, मतलब ये हम लोगों का एक बड़ा प्रिय काम होता था, ये कैसे इसको खिसकाना है। ऐसी भीड़ होती थी स्टूडेंट्स की कि इसको खिसकाओ, ये वो करके। तो अब लेकिन आज वो परिस्थिति नहीं है हमारे पास कहीं भी। मतलब जो रचनात्मक काम करने वाले हैं वो भी, और जो आंदोलन के काम कर रहे हैं वो भी, या गांधी के काम करने वाले लोग भी, इन लोगों की कमी बहुत खल रही है, बहुत कमी हो रही है। तो मैं ये सवाल सबसे कर रहा हूँ कि क्यों ऐसा हो रहा है।
Do you have any thoughts yourself on that? सवाल तो है, लेकिन आपका कोई विश्लेषण हो या आपके उस पर कोई सोच हो उसके बारे में?
मेरा बहुत मोटे तौर पर ये है कि हम लोगों का संवाद बहुत कम हुआ है। हमारा जिस तरह से हम लोग एक जमाने में जाते थे, हमारे बाद की पीढ़ी उस तरह से नहीं जा रही है, नहीं उस प्रकार के संवाद कर पा रही। अपने छात्रों को या अपने साथियों को लेके उन इलाकों में जाना और उसको समझना। मैं आपको एक बहुत छोटा उदाहरण देता हूँ। मैं बहुत दिनों से इस बात पर चिंतित हूँ क्योंकि ये बड़ी मेगा इरिगेशन प्रोजेक्ट्स बन रहे हैं पूरे देश में, और आप जानते हैं उनको लेके बड़ी कंट्रोवर्सी है। हमारे यहाँ तवा एक परियोजना है होशंगाबाद में, जो कि 70s में कभी शुरू हुई और अब वापस ये स्थिति आ रही है कि पानी नहीं बचा। तो लगभग वो सर्कल पूरा हो गया है। मैं बहुत बार कह चुका हूँ, और बॉम्बे IIT में भी मैंने इसके बारे में कुछ मित्रों से बात की थी कि क्या इसकी एक स्टडी हो सकती है, क्या ये समझा जा सकता है कि एक जमाने में पानी और उसके साथ साथ क्रॉपिंग पैटर्न बदले और सीड्स बदल गए और जमीनें बदल गई, लोगों की रहन सहन बदल गया, और 25 साल 30 साल बाद हम फिर से वापस उसी स्थिति में पहुंच गए जब पानी नहीं मिल रहा है, एक बूंद पानी नहीं मिल रहा। तो ये क्या चक्कर है, क्या हो रहा है ये, और ये क्यों हो रहा है? ये एक बहुत सामान्य काम की बात मैं कर रहा था, लेकिन मुझे मिला नहीं। मैं कई दिनों से इसको कोशिश कर रहा था कि ये अगर हो सके, और इस समय तो ये बहुत जरूरी है क्योंकि बहुत जगह आप जानते हैं मेगा प्रोजेक्ट्स बन रहे हैं, और उत्तराखंड में खास तौर पर, मध्य प्रदेश में बहुत सारी जगहों पर, नर्मदा पर आप जानते हैं, और जगह भी देश भर में इस तरह के प्रोजेक्ट्स बन रहे हैं। तो उसको समझने के लिहाज से भी, और ये शायद आपको एक्सपोज करेगा। आप एक बार जाएंगे तो आपको समझ आएगा कि डिस्प्लेसमेंट क्या होता है। आप जाएंगे तो आपको समझ आएगा कि घर छोड़ना, अपना परिवार छोड़ना, अपना समाज छोड़ना, अपनी खेती छोड़ना क्या मतलब निकलता है। तो जाहिर है कि उससे एक प्रकार का समझ तो बनेगी, लेकिन वो भी नहीं हो पा रहा, ये मैं कह रहा हूँ।
Right. Thank you. So it's coming to 8:30. So if there are no comments or questions from the audience or whatever is left of the audience that had joined. Maybe we can do a quick round of any comments from our 4 guests today, Meera, Rakesh, Dunu, and Arvind, or Arvind, if you'd like to say something, and then we can perhaps wrap up, unless I'm missing something and something still needs to be done. So
I think, Pankaj, all of us would like to really thank you, Satish. Thank you for hosting the conference. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to reflect. And thank you so much for organizing this release.
it's been our pleasure, Meera. It's an honor because it's a great learning for all of us. So thanks to all of you. Thanks to FREA. It's a little bit of you scratch our back and we scratch yours, but it's more than it's more than that, because it's very, very meaningful. So thank you so much.
I think more than that, Pankaj, I think when you say thank you very much, I think we owed it to your group to host it and take this forward and in our own little way.
Absolutely, absolutely. Arvind, Dunu, Rakesh, आप कुछ कहना चाहेंगे?
बस नहीं.
Okay, thank you.
धन्यवाद. बहुत धन्यवाद.
Thanks.
Yeah, so then as our last thing, I request our head Anand to say a few words before we propose a vote of thanks or whatever he wants to say, and then we can wrap up. Anand?
Yeah, I was really worried about this part because you have put my name against wrapping up the session.
No, I don't mean it that way.
Yeah, I'm not going to even attempt that.
Yeah, sure.
Such a very special occasion where we have like 4 stalwarts here, and then they shared some of the memories from the era, which was so different. I mean, many of us are IIT alumni from different times, and the current students are also here. So each of us can try to relate or unable to relate to some of these situations that you try to describe. One thing definitely, I mean, as already done, I would definitely like to thank FREA for approaching to Sitara. They thought that we could be relevant, and that's, I think, a good recognition for Sitara, that in these changing times, all of you thought that still there is some element in Sitara where there is some kind of a hope for this kind of a event and this kind of a discussion to happen. And I really hope that we continue to keep that hope alive in the coming times as well. So this is one wish I have, or I would like to continue to work on this. And yes, I mean, this direct exposure to society is very, very relevant. I mean, the times are very changing. But this, I mean, it's very clear that what we also need to work on is, I don't know and how to do that, but training to ask questions. I think, as you mentioned, I mean, in your time, probably you already had it within your DNA, and then over the time periods, there is some mutation, so many factors working on us. Maybe it is media, maybe it is, there are so many influences the modern society has. And then I think as we have more and more exposure to only visual or audio-visual media, I think there is tendency to probably think less and ask less questions. I mean, people are just probably tempted to accept whatever is shown to them. And that is one danger I think today's society is facing. And so rather than reading or listening to videos, I think it is the best to go out and, as it was mentioned, live with people, watch them, I mean, be with them, so that we can understand the realities better. And then probably this whole process of asking questions can begin. What Lakshmi asked, I think, yes, I mean, she's looking forward to go to villages, but yes, I mean, that will trigger the process much better. And in fact, the last 2 years have been really testing for Sitara, because of the corona, we could not even take them to any single field visit. And we realized that this field exposure has its own merit, and it is very, very important for the kind of training that we aspire to give to our students. So I think through this interaction, I really hope that students have picked up some of those grains, and then they will build upon that. And then I think they will carve out their own journey. It was very interesting to know that couple of our own colleagues, how they were, I mean, I didn't know this part of their lives, and then it was a good occasion to know about our own colleagues through this forum. So thanks Subodh and Bakul for sharing those incidences. Finally, I mean, I just say that, as it was mentioned, that we have to think about what next. And then, so we need not wait for another important milestone that 50 years or 60 years after you graduated or whatever. So whenever there is a convenient time slot, we can arrange such a get together. And I'm sure, because every year we have a fresh set of students. So any new set of students will definitely benefit from this interaction. And I think this legacy needs to continue. So we'll really look forward to this handholding from all of you who are our seniors, senior alumni. And then please, I mean, as Professor Agnihotri mentioned, I mean, why Dunu did not scold or took to task more people, because we would have got more faculty members. But I mean, still, I mean, there is a I mean, chance that you can maybe scold our students today, and then we'll also benefit from that process. So, I think let's try to see how we can facilitate these future sets of or sessions of interaction. I remember last time we had a very good session with Arvindji when the students who are going to the villages, I think how they can break ice with the kids in the villages. I think that is something, some tricks they can learn from Arvindji. So I think there is a lot of merit in this interaction, and I really hope that we can continue to build on this. And thanks Pankaj especially for catalyzing all this process. We really thank you for this. I think that's all I would like to say. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
great.
you. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, so with that, we'll wrap up for today. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to FREA and all the participants here.
Pankaj, do you want to take a photo?
I don't know how to take a photo, so somebody who knows.
Leave it to the younger generation. So I think the TA will manage.
Okay. So we are like half. So everybody can please hold on for one more minute. Otherwise, we'll have blank screen.
Yes, and I may request the FREA people to hold the book in their hand, because
Yes,
the title of the event today was.
I'm not a FREA person, but I'll still, because I have a copy.
You're almost there.
But mine's all.
Please hold the book such a way that it's not out of focus. Pankaj.
Yeah, but the camera is deciding that.
And Pankaj, you also should be visible.
Yes.
Then the book will not be visible.
So he wants to say he's the man behind the book.
Okay. Great.
Yes, sir, done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.